Hi, Brad. You know how cute I always thought you were.
It's the flirty reunion between exes Jennifer Aniston.
Where I think you were hitting on my girlfriend.
Was I hitting on your girlfriend, really?
I think so.
Oh.
I was flat.
They were Hollywood's golden couple. A wedding in Malibu, heartfelt vows, and promises that felt too perfect to ever break. For years, Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston were the dream. Two stars who found something rare behind the flashing lights: each other. But what if the perfect love story was never perfect at all? Behind every red carpet smile, there was a silence neither of them dared to break. And when it finally did, the truth wasn't loud. It was devastating. No dramatic headlines, no cheating confession, just a quiet separation, followed by something even more confusing. A new woman, a shifting narrative, and a slow unraveling of everything they once stood for.
Hi, Aniston.
Hi, Pitt.
How you doing?
Good, honey. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. That is.
Hi, Brad.
Now, nearly 2 decades later, Brad Pitt has finally broken his silence. And what he revealed about Jennifer Aniston changes everything. This isn't just about a breakup. It's about two people who had everything and still lost each other. And once you hear what really ended Brad and Jen, you may never look at their story the same way again. Long before the headlines, long before the heartbreak, there was just a quiet night between two of Hollywood's biggest stars. Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston didn't fall in love on a red carpet or at some glittering award show. They met through their managers, two people on parallel paths, finally crossing after years of near misses. Both were freshly out of high-profile relationships. Brad had just ended his engagement to Gwyneth Paltrow. Jennifer had parted ways with actor Tate Donovan. Neither of them was looking for a spotlight.
Is it true that Jennifer sleepwalks? Is that true? That's true.
True story. Yes, she often, she gets a lot done when she...
What they found instead was a kind of quiet chemistry, something rare in their world. Their first date wasn't a spectacle. It was simple, casual, low pressure, and yet it clicked. Jennifer would later describe it as a really easy evening, really fun. That kind of ease, that unforced rhythm, became the foundation of what would grow into Hollywood's most celebrated relationship. For a few months, they kept things private. But in September 1999, they stepped out publicly for the first time at the Emmy Awards. Brad, the reigning king of the box office. Jen, America's sweetheart on Friends. The moment they walked onto that carpet hand in hand, the cameras didn't just capture it, they chased it.
The crazy thing about the Jen and Brad divorce is it really didn't end in 2005. Fast forward to many years later, these two have several kids together.
Brad and Jen were suddenly the couple. Beautiful, talented, grounded. They looked like the kind of love story even cynics could believe in. But Brad wasn't just swept up in the public glow. Behind the scenes, he was planning something deeply personal. He worked for 7 months with Italian jeweler Silvia Damiani to create a one-of-a-kind engagement ring. A swirl of diamonds and platinum that wrapped around itself like a story with no ending. It wasn't just a ring. It was a signal. He wasn't playing a role. He meant it. In July 2000, Brad and Jen were married in a private ceremony at a cliffside estate in Malibu. 200 guests, a gospel choir, a wall of white roses, fireworks over the Pacific.
You've moved on quickly.
Well, everybody has.
Do you guys still talk? You and Brad?
It was the kind of wedding that felt impossible in Hollywood. Extravagant, yes, but deeply heartfelt. Their vows were a blend of humor and sincerity. Jen promised to make Brad his favorite banana milkshake. Brad promised to always let her have control of the remote and to fix the air conditioner without complaining. It was sweet, grounded, real. Two megastars talking like best friends. At the 2000 Emmys, they returned as newlyweds, glowing, radiant, in love. When Brad made his now famous cameo on Friends, playing a character who hated Rachel Green, the irony wasn't lost on anyone. It was a playful wink to fans who had fallen as hard for the couple as they had for each other.
To many, this just seemed like an ordinary photo of Jen Aniston and Brad Pitt vacationing in the Bahamas together. But what many didn't know is just 7 days after,
They co-founded a production company together, took on new roles, navigated fame side by side. On the outside, everything sparkled. But beneath that carefully constructed perfection, something quieter was happening. Something no one could see. Yet, because love stories like this, the ones that feel too perfect to fall apart, they usually do. From the outside, Brad and Jennifer had everything: talent, beauty, fame, and what looked like a rare kind of normalcy in a world built on appearances. But behind the curtain, they were learning that love in Hollywood is never simple, especially when the world wants your relationship more than you do.
The crazy thing about the Jen and Brad divorce is it really didn't end in 2005. Fast forward to many years later, these two have several kids together, and
Jennifer's career was skyrocketing. Friends was at its peak, and her portrayal of Rachel Green made her one of the most beloved faces on television. Brad was at the height of his movie stardom. Fight Club, Ocean's 11, Troy. Together, they weren't just actors. They were a brand, the golden couple, and everyone wanted a piece of them. But behind every glowing magazine cover was a quieter reality. The constant media scrutiny wasn't just invasive, it was exhausting. Every smile analyzed, every appearance dissected, and the biggest question that followed them everywhere: when are you having kids? It wasn't just speculation, it was pressure.
Have you heard, and I mean this with all due respect, have you heard the rumors about Brad Pitt joining the cast potentially?
And over time, it started to weigh on their relationship in ways few people realized. Jennifer had always been open about wanting a family. In interviews, she spoke candidly. 2 or 3 children sounded perfect, she said. She believed in balance, that you could have a career and be a mother. She was ready to slow down, to make space for something more. Brad, on the other hand, dreamed big. He once told her he wanted 7 children, a full house, a new legacy. But the timing never aligned. Their schedules clashed, their rhythms felt off. And slowly, quietly, their shared dreams started to fracture into 2 separate visions.
I hated her. She was horrible to me in high school. But hey, that was a long time ago. I'm in a good place.
In 2003, Jennifer sat down for an interview with The Guardian and spoke words that fans would later revisit with a different kind of clarity. It's time. I think you can work with a baby. I think you can work pregnant. I think you can do it all. So I'm truly looking forward to slowing down. That wasn't a PR soundbite. That was a woman preparing for a new chapter. And yet, it never came. A year later, in an interview with W Magazine, she was more careful. She talked about how marriage was work, how compromise mattered, how perfection didn't exist. When asked if Brad was the love of her life, her answer was telling. Is he the love of my life? I mean, I don't know. I've never been someone who says he's the love of my life.
The last pictures of this love story. I'm not gonna lie, these paparazzi photos of Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston still confuse me.
He's certainly a big love in my life. It was honest, grounded, but it wasn't the fairy tale fans expected. It wasn't the language of forever. In hindsight, these were the first cracks. The soft, almost imperceptible signs that something was shifting. That behind the perfect photos and witty banter, 2 people were quietly drifting in different directions. But neither of them said it out loud. Not yet. Because the next chapter of their story wouldn't be whispered behind closed doors. It would unfold in front of the entire world. It started like any other movie role. A big-budget action film, 2 A-list stars, a little flirtation in the script. Nothing unusual, until it was.
Outside one night. The alarm was going off, and I found her outside. Literally, she had to negotiate her through like 3 or 4 rooms.
In 2004, Brad Pitt began filming Mr. and Mrs. Smith opposite Angelina Jolie. It was marketed as an explosive spy thriller, but behind the scenes, something else was catching fire. And it had nothing to do with the script. Brad was still married to Jennifer Aniston. Publicly, everything looked intact. Privately, the tension had already begun to build. 2 people sharing a life, but not a direction. 2 different clocks ticking under the same roof. And then came Angelina. At first, it was just work. That's what everyone said. Co-stars, professionals. But the chemistry was hard to ignore. Not just on screen, but between takes. Eyewitnesses later described the atmosphere on set as electric, unspoken, and undeniably intimate.
After years of whispers and unconfirmed rumors, Brad Pitt has finally broken his silence about his past with Jennifer.
Both Brad and Angelina denied anything romantic had happened during filming. And maybe that was true at the time, but something was happening. Something emotional. Something that would unravel everything. By January 2005, Brad and Jennifer took a trip to Anguilla for New Year's. Sun, sand, close friends. To the public, it was just another vacation. But to those paying closer attention, it felt like a final attempt to reconnect. A last shot at fixing what was slipping. Days later, they released a joint statement. We would like to announce that after 7 years together, we have decided to formally separate. This decision is the result of much thoughtful consideration.
I mean, many women that I know have had an experience like that or similar to that where you...
It was polite, careful, controlled, and completely devastating. The world was stunned. In just a few weeks, the ring was gone from Jennifer's finger. And in its place, rumors, whispers, speculation that refused to die down. Then, in April 2005, just 3 months after announcing the separation, photographers captured Brad Pitt walking hand in hand with Angelina Jolie on a Kenyan beach, playing with her son, Maddox. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't deniable, and it wasn't something Jennifer could shield herself from anymore. It didn't matter that both Brad and Angelina insisted nothing happened during the marriage. It didn't matter that Jen stayed quiet, dignified, gracious.
What do you make of all the ridiculousness about you and Brad reuniting on all these carpets all season long?
It's hysterical.
What the world saw was Brad Pitt, formerly one half of America's favorite couple, now building sandcastles with someone else's child. What had started as a romantic action movie had become the plot twist that no one saw coming. And in the eyes of millions, Brad's hand didn't just leave Jennifer's. It reached for something else entirely. It reached for another life. And the fallout would be bigger than either of them ever imagined. By the time the photos from that Kenyan beach hit the press, the narrative had shifted. And Jennifer Aniston was no longer just a wife going through a separation. She became something else entirely. The woman left behind. She hadn't said anything yet. No interviews, no public breakdown, but her silence said everything.
7 years of a happy life together, and all of a sudden, one of the most beautiful couples in Hollywood breaks up. So what happened?
Just 2 months after their separation, Jennifer filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. It was formal, procedural, on paper, a clean break. But emotionally, it was anything but clean. In that same filing, she asked to legally drop Pitt from her name. A symbolic move that didn't just sever a marriage. It marked the moment Jennifer Aniston stopped playing the role the world had written for her, the role of Brad Pitt's wife. And as her marriage ended quietly, Brad's next chapter was roaring into motion. In July 2005, Brad and Angelina appeared in W Magazine together in a feature called Domestic Bliss.
So I just did a whole part 4 and it got deleted and I don't know how. So part 4, the loves of...
Staged photos of the two of them playing husband and wife, doing laundry, lounging with kids, sharing glances like it wasn't too soon, like nothing was wrong. The photos weren't just bold, they were deliberate. The message was clear. Brad wasn't looking back. For Jennifer, it wasn't just betrayal, it was public betrayal. A story she never agreed to star in. When she was forced to watch from the sidelines as headlines spun her grief into gossip. But when she finally did speak, months later, it wasn't with bitterness. It was with a single word that said more than any tell-all ever could. Uncool. That's how she described what happened with Brad and Angelina. Not cruel, not unforgivable, just uncool. A word so restrained it carried more hurt than any accusation.
For years, the world has speculated about Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt's whirlwind romance, their highly publicized...
Because Jennifer wasn't playing for sympathy. She wasn't out to win the breakup. She was just surviving it. Meanwhile, Brad's world was changing fast. By 2006, Angelina was pregnant. They were photographed together constantly, traveling, attending humanitarian events, building the image of a new family. And all the while, the story of Brad and Jen slowly faded. Not because it stopped mattering, but because it became something else. A symbol, a cautionary tale. Brad and Jennifer's divorce wasn't just the end of a relationship, it was the collapse of a collective fantasy. The golden couple wasn't golden anymore, but in the ashes of that perfect image, something real was left behind.
Brad Pitt, the man, the myth, the heartbreak. Let's talk. I never believed that Brad and Jennifer Aniston would last.
Grief, confusion, and a truth that neither of them could say out loud at the time. They hadn't just lost each other. They had lost who they were when they were together. For a long time, Brad Pitt stayed quiet. While tabloids speculated and fans picked sides, he remained the calm center of a storm he had partly created. But silence has a shelf life. And years later, Brad finally opened up. And what he revealed turned everything on its head. In an interview with V Magazine, he spoke about Jennifer, not as an ex-wife, but as someone who still mattered. "We have a lot of life together that isn't wiped away," he said. It wasn't a headline, it wasn't scandal, it was something deeper. A hint that maybe he didn't leave everything behind after all.
Joining the cast potentially? Have you heard that? Who really asked that question? Who said that?
But then came Parade magazine. That's where things shifted again. Brad, reflecting on his past, said, "I was trying to pretend the marriage was something that it wasn't." It was one sentence, raw, personal, and devastating. Fans took it as a dig, a suggestion that Jennifer hadn't been enough, that the golden marriage had been hollow behind the curtains. The backlash was immediate, but Brad doubled back. He insisted the quote was misunderstood, that he wasn't blaming Jen, he was blaming himself. "Jen is an incredibly giving, loving, and hilarious woman," he clarified. "What I meant was, I was becoming dull to myself." It was an admission few expected. Brad Pitt wasn't just confessing regret.
Just because you carry it well doesn't mean it isn't heavy. I don't know if you guys have checked out the Jennifer Aniston.
He was acknowledging something even harder to say, that he had been lost. And Jennifer, she had been the one trying to hold him together. But by the time he realized what he had, he was already building a new life with someone else. Angelina Jolie had become the centerpiece of his world. Children, humanitarian missions, marriage. And yet, even as he praised that life publicly, every interview about Jennifer carried a shadow. A hint of a man who knew he had chosen something else, and maybe wasn't sure he chose right. Because for all the love and chaos that came with Angelina, something was missing. Something quieter, simpler, something that maybe he had only ever found with Jennifer.
So that's a tremendous outfit, and the reason that's a tremendous outfit is you have tremendous legs. Fantastic legs.
But it was too late to go back. While Brad was building a global family with Angelina, Jennifer Aniston was learning how to be alone in front of the entire world. She didn't vanish, she didn't retreat, she did what she always did. She kept working, kept smiling, kept showing up on red carpets and sitcom sets like the breakup hadn't just shattered every expectation of what her future was supposed to look like. But something had shifted. You could see it in the way she answered questions, in the slight pause before every public smile. In interviews, Jen handled the fallout with grace. When asked directly about the rumors, the betrayal, even the baby she never had, she didn't lash out. She said just enough to remind the world. She had been there too. She had loved him too.
Brad Pitt had to give Jennifer Aniston what after their divorce? This romance didn't last long, but it was so iconic in more.
"He was a big love in my life," she said, "but I'm not sure if he was the love of my life." It wasn't bitterness, it was reality. She dated again. Vince Vaughn, John Mayer, and later Justin Theroux, whom she eventually married in a quiet ceremony in 2015. For a while, it seemed like Jen had finally moved past the shadow of Brad Pitt. But even that marriage unraveled. And once again, headlines circled back, not just to Jen, but to Jen and Brad. Because no matter how much time passed, no matter how many years or relationships came and went, the world couldn't let go of the idea that these two might still be tied together in ways no divorce could sever. And maybe neither could they.
On a beach in Kenya,
The media interpreted the pictures as confirmation of a relationship between Brad and
In 2020, nearly 15 years after their split, the internet exploded over a few backstage photos from the SAG Awards. Brad, Jen, smiling, holding hands, laughing like no time had passed. One photo, one touch, and millions of fans started believing in fairy tales again. Even as Brad began dating again, and Jennifer remained officially single, the story refused to die. Because despite everything they had been through, every betrayal, heartbreak, and misstep, the one thing that never faded was the question, what if? What if they hadn't broken? What if Brad had stayed? What if love, real love, doesn't ever fully go away?
Jennifer Aniston reveals she's made multiple attempts to get pregnant, but at age 53, she said she simply cannot have a child. Jennifer Aniston revealed that while her character...
The years passed, marriages ended, families shifted, headlines changed, but somehow Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston never really left each other's orbit. In 2019, fans spotted the first real signal. Brad was one of the guests at Jennifer's 50th birthday bash. Not just present, but warmly welcomed. Photographers caught them talking, laughing, looking almost comfortable. Then came the SAG Awards in 2020, the moment that lit the internet on fire. Brad backstage watching her speech with soft eyes. Jennifer grabbing his wrist as he walked by. That 1 second frozen in time felt like a ripple from the past, like something unfinished had briefly returned to the surface.
The wedding of Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston on July 29, 2000 was nothing short of a fairy tale.
But the truth, they weren't getting back together. Not then, not now. Sources close to both insisted the connection was real, but not romantic. They're friends, one said. Supportive, kind, but it's not that. Still, the whispers refused to die. Every photo of them within 100 feet of each other sparked a fresh wave of speculation. And Brad, he wasn't helping the rumors. He called Jennifer a good friend, praised her work, and never once rolled his eyes at the idea that maybe, just maybe, there was more still lingering between them. But behind the warmth was something else: regret. Brad had built a family with Angelina Jolie.
Apparently you were a little mean to him in high school.
A little mean. You made my life miserable.
I had no idea.
But that chapter ended in legal chaos. Years of custody battles, accusations, public fallouts, children caught in the crossfire. The man who once stood smiling at red carpets now faced lawsuits and estranged relationships with the very kids he once called his world. One of Angelina's daughters, Zahara, even dropped Pitt from her name. Meanwhile, Jennifer was still standing, quiet, resilient, untouched by the drama, and yet forever linked to it. And maybe that's the final twist no one expected. Because even if Brad never said it out loud, even if Jennifer never admitted it in an interview, the silence between them began to say something else. That timing isn't just a detail in love stories, it's everything.
And well, we already know that story. And literally his shirt says trash. It was like a sign. Accompanying them on this trip was Courtney.
Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston's story didn't end with a betrayal or a scandal or a shouting match caught by paparazzi. It ended in something much quieter. A slow drift. A silence neither could fill. And that's what still haunts people. Because it wasn't just about the end of a marriage. It was about what could have been. Two people who, for a moment, had everything. Timing, connection, simplicity, and somehow, even that wasn't enough. Brad went on to build something bigger, louder, messier with Angelina. But as the years passed, what began as passion turned into court dates, custody battles, and a string of heartbreaks far more public than anything he had endured with Jennifer.
You know, was it like one of those classical love stories, like when, I don't know, when Ross first saw Rachel?
Meanwhile, Jen kept rising, professionally, personally, emotionally. And yet every room she walks into, she's still met with the same question. What if? What if Brad hadn't left? What if they had tried harder? What if their timing had just been better? They haven't spoken those words out loud. They don't have to. Because the story still echoes in magazine headlines, in red carpet glances, in the way fans still watch for a flicker of something in their eyes when they're near each other. But maybe that's the truth. Some love stories don't get closure. They just pause indefinitely. Not with a bang, not with a breakdown, but with a look, a silence, a memory of something that almost was and maybe never will be again. And that, more than any breakup, divorce, or confession, is why the world still can't let go. Because sometimes the most unforgettable love stories are the ones that end too soon.